I'm Chad Ruthermond,
And I'm Andy Kenny.
and welcome to NOCLIP Pocket, light on calories, loaded with taste. Today, we're going to be talking about Minit, a game that was developed by J.W. Kitty, is that Jukio?
I don't know.
And
I just wrote it. I
Dom.
just wrote down what it said,
Yeah.
man.
And it was published by Devolver Digital. The reason that was, oh yeah, and I guess it was also released in 2018. And it's on everything now, which is convenient, but
Yeah.
also a little weird. But Linux, Mac, Windows, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and on Android and iOS as of 2019. The reason that I gave a big, stilted, stumbly developer thing is because this was basically just developed by 4 unassociated people.
Yep.
Like they do not, they're not a company.
Yeah, they did not incorporate.
Yeah. When you complete the game and it goes back to the title sequence, it just shows 4 Twitter handles and is like, here you go. These are the people who made the game, which is like an incredibly honest kind of way of doing this. It's like if we just called our podcast Chad and Andy podcast.
I mean, people do stuff like that.
Well, yeah, for sure. But I wasn't expecting that, I guess.
No, it's definitely uncommon with video games.
Yeah. So Minit is a action adventure game, like a Zelda-like.
It's like a top-down 2D Zelda, whatever you want to call that style.
Yeah. And of course, the catch is that after finding your first item, a cursed sword, you have 1 minute to live. And then every time that you die, you respawn at your most recent save point house. And so the goal is basically to complete the entirety of the game in these 1 minute chunks. So all of your travel time has to be done from certain points.
Yeah, it's like you have these little bases that you launch little expeditions from. Like you do some exploring, figure out several different kinds of goals you need to accomplish and try to figure out how to do them. And you can only do them in 60-second increments.
Yeah. I ended up really clicking with this more than I thought that I would. My initial impression, and this is dumb of me and I realize, was
So dumb, Chen.
I'm probably going to hate having to go back to the start every time. But where my lizard brain wanted to jump in with all the hatred and malice, the rational part of my brain should have said, literally the furthest back you can possibly go is 1 minute.
Yep.
And once that sort of clicked for me, the game became a lot of, I don't know, the exploration ended up being very enjoyable. And I know I did not complete this to the fullest extent that you can.
Oh, yeah, me neither. And I sympathize with that because I had similar thoughts. I'm sure they weren't as strong in my mind as they might have been in yours.
You have a less dominant lizard brain.
Yes. I have a recessive lizard brain. But because I don't like roguelikes because the idea of having to start a game over is, after I've invested a bunch of time, is very unappealing to me.
Right.
But this only is a 60-second loop, and I don't know if it's the presentation or the fact that it's so upfront with that's what the game is. It doesn't really feel like you're losing and being set back over and over again. It's just how the game works, and I think it makes it palatable if you were worried about that sort of thing.
It's a really interesting design challenge as well. I didn't look into the history of this game because that's not what we do on this podcast. Be informative, but it feels like the kind of idea that sort of springs forth from a game jam type situation where somebody just has an idea for a game and they sort of talk it through and be like, well, what does this mean? What does that mean? And getting to see it borne out in this game is actually really cool. I love the fact that because of the 1 minute time limit traveling, the map cannot be very big.
Yeah, everything's got to be less than a minute away from the bases.
And like there's a more uninspired version of this game where they would have put like the checkpoint houses in like a big long line, and you could go all the way out like a mile away, and there'd be tons of map space, and they could do that, but it's not as interesting as trying to hide a lot of things in a very small area. It just is like it's kind of fascinating to see like how they gated everything. And while I won't say it's the most creative thing in the entire world, it's definitely like a really smart use of resources.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely the more interesting way to go, to make it more dense and to hide things. Like, yeah, just be more clever with it. And I don't know whether that was more of an intentional decision or more of like a working within limitations kind of thing. Maybe a little of both, but it worked out for him, I think.
Yeah, no, I entirely agree. I think the density of things is kind of like arguably the coolest thing about this game. When I finished the game, like it gives you a little breakdown of all the shit that you got, and it was like I never got the fast shoes. I didn't get enough coins for that. I didn't get the. I got 10 of 16 items, I think. Like there's a whole host of things that I did not find, and I genuinely thought I was being pretty thorough.
Yeah, I think I had the exact same, like 10 of 16 items. Like, I think if you kind of just go critical path and then just beat the game, you'll probably end up around 50% of stuff done, 10 of 16 items, because you get the flippers so late in the game, and I think that's the big thing that opens up a lot of the bonus content, is being able to swim, because
Right.
they gate a lot of stuff with water.
Yeah, I noticed there's like a weird octopus man in the temple who asks you to find his tentacles, and I found 3 of 8.
Yeah, I think I may have found 4, but I don't remember.
Yeah, and it didn't feel like when I got to the end of the game, admittedly it was kind of abrupt, and we'll get into that and why in a second. I was thinking like, where on earth could they possibly be if I haven't seen more of them by now? It really is just like kind of amazing how they hit everything. And yeah, I do agree the swimming is like a thing.
Because yeah, I thought about, you get the flippers like right before the end, basically. So if you want to do all the extra content, you have to get the flippers and then turn around and go back towards like other parts of the game and explore with those.
Yeah.
Which I did not do personally.
I mean, fair.
Yeah, because I was, you're right up there at the end and you just keep doing the thing you were doing.
Yeah, that actually wasn't the case for me.
Oh, yeah?
And I guess this is where we'll talk about that. The Minit podcast, probably not going to be all that long. I'm going to go ahead and say.
We should have recorded this in 1-minute chunks, like we start over at the beginning after every 60 seconds.
People would love that. Welcome to NOCLIP Pocket.
We don't go that far. We just like, so in Minit we just start that at every 60 seconds.
That'd be very meta. But no, what happened with me was I'd gotten the flippers sort of like naturally, whatever, after getting all the guests and shit. And then when I got into the factory, I didn't know that was going to be the end of the game.
No, yeah, me neither.
Yeah, like it just felt sort of like another thing.
Yep.
And then I don't know, there are clues for sure. Like there are people in the waiting room who are like, now all the swords are being cursed and like blah blah.
And there's the guy on the beach where you pick up the sword at the beginning who says like, you got the sword, you got to go to the factory. And so yeah, it is kind of hinted out that that's your ultimate goal, but like it doesn't really build up to it.
Right. I mean, it would be difficult to do so with the format of the game, but
I agree.
But yeah, that is true. Like there's definitely, there was an inkling maybe that it was going to be the end of the game, but what I did not expect was for it to go into a boss battle at the end.
Oh yeah, no.
Though I will say, like, it does do a pretty good job of like the difficulty curve, I guess. It's really hard to like map out what players are going to be doing in this game, but I found that over the course of the game, the challenges I was doing ended up getting, a little bit harder every time. And the factory is like where I should have assumed the boss was going to be because of how hard it is to map the difficulty, because the last challenge of getting the watering can was probably the hardest thing that I had to do in the game. So there's that. Then the final boss was fucking awesome though.
It was pretty cool. It's that it just seems like it's a common thing in like if someone makes like a top-down game nowadays, that the boss is going to be like a cool bullet hell thing.
I mean, I'm struggling to think of an example, but if that is
like
the case,
Hyper
I'm
Light
glad.
Drifter.
That's true, yeah.
It'll do. Like, I think any top-down games I can think of that have bosses, or Titan Souls.
Oh yeah.
Like pretty much all the bosses are like a big floaty thing that shoots stuff.
Man, I didn't even realize. I should go back and finish It'll Do. But yeah, that's the game. That's what you do in the game.
Yeah, I completely agree with your thoughts on the difficulty curve, though. Like, it got harder towards the end, like as you would want. But I thought like it was pretty smooth all the way through. Like, it took me like just long to puzzle stuff out, and like it felt fulfilling, and like you were actually exploring and adventuring.
Yeah.
So I think it is impressive how they like really nailed that, at least for you and I.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I feel like they did a good job with it, specifically because this isn't a game, despite taking inspiration from Zelda and despite being a game with a really punishing mechanic for not finishing puzzles. Like, if you don't get a puzzle, you only have like 20 seconds at a time to work on it. And like, obviously part of that is built into the puzzle design. But the other part is like, if you really are struggling with something, this could take you a very long time to get past it. And it never really did, which makes me feel like they nailed the complexity of it. Because you don't have much time.
Yeah, you don't really have that many actual like Zelda style puzzles.
Right.
That would like like you need time to sit and like figure out. It's more just kind of like a little bit more like lock and key. Like, I found this piece, where do I take it?
Right.
And like you can do that kind of stuff in a minute.
Yeah. I do want to shout out the negative puzzle that I didn't like as much, which was the one where you had to push the guy around and play hot and cold with him.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize that he would change what he said if you pushed him. So I didn't for a while and kind of aimlessly wandered before I came back to him and ended up...
Yeah, I also did not realize he was on a box, and therefore I could push him around.
Yeah. So that was like a whole bit. But, they even like throw in a second reference to that guy to let you know that he's important, because the hotel manager is
he gives you hints.
Yeah. So the fact that is like called out at least makes it a little bit better, but it did take me like I don't know, a couple dozen deaths before I realized I should go back there.
Yeah, like I found a few of the hotel guests without even realizing that the manager was telling me who to go get.
Right.
So it made it harder to like notice that. So yeah, that was a little bit hard to figure out.
And yeah, and a lot of the stuff that happens here is kind of unclear. Like, and part of it is definitely by design. The game has like a real it's like a comedy game to some extent. There are definitely jokes in it. And part of the jokes are kind of at the player's expense, sort of like, oh, you did this thing that doesn't make any sense? Well, now I'm going to do this other thing that's unrelated and still doesn't make sense to you. And there's not a whole lot of that, but it is like, because everything is so frantic and the text speed is so fast, because that's the only way you could have done it, you end up with these situations where you're like, you just sprint by a dude and something happens. Like, there's the dude in the trees that you have to like cut down, and you don't... actually Key in a Tree is a much better example of this, because in the on the island area, where there are these like generators and stuff. In order to get into the basement of the house there, you have to cut down
the big tree
that's off the top of the screen that just has a key on it. And it's like that. It's insane that there's an item there, and you would have just gotten the ability to chop trees down, and just like you basically had to do it out of curiosity, which is what happened with me. And
Oh
I was
yeah,
like,
me too.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to know what's up with that tree that goes off screen.
Yeah. I don't know. It's that kind of thing that like kind of pulls the tone all together with the rest of the design.
Yeah, it's just like little cheeky, clever things they do. Like the old man by the lighthouse is very funny because you only have a minute and his text speed is slow and he tells like this big long story. And like the longer it goes on, like the funnier it is. That like I had to spend a whole life like just run straight to this guy and to listen to his whole story.
It's like the no sleep mask in
the all night mask.
The all night mask.
The nap sleep mask.
The nap sleep mask. So, do we want to talk about the actual mechanics of this game, even though they're pretty shallow?
Sure. If you're a longtime listener of the cast, or if you've listened to like the Link's Awakening or Minish Cap episodes, you know I'm a big fan of top-down style, like 2D Zelda type games. And just like on a real base level, I found this really satisfying to play. And like the black and white palette makes it like even more charming, I think. They did a good job with the like the retro style of it. But yeah, you move around with the D-pad or the analog stick if you prefer, and you swing a sword and you interact with stuff. You know, that's basically it.
Yep, that's the entirety of your verb set, pretty much. The sword swing is very slow, and obviously that is intentional to make it take time, because that's like the highest cost you can pay, and so it makes combat this like combat is not what this game is about.
No.
By a lot. At the end of the game I had like 5 hearts, and I feel like it was basically unnecessary to ever have more than 2, really.
Yeah.
Because if you get hit more than twice, you've probably already wasted enough time that you won't be able to finish the thing that you're doing.
Yeah, I feel like the scorpions were the only ever like real threat.
Because they move in a like less predictable way. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the dudes with swords.
Oh yeah.
Were hard in some capacity because they would like. Their swords reached slightly longer than yours, or I don't know if I was just real bad.
They had I'd never really had any trouble with them because they had such long cooldowns in between when they would attack.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Like,
so you could just kind of run in and shank them all real quick, you know.
I really liked the sword throwing ability you get, because then I don't even have to engage at all with them.
Yeah, you just got a nice projectile attack.
Yeah. God, yeah, there's not a whole lot there.
Yeah, I thought the camera was weird. You only ever needed it to get into the factory.
The press pass?
What?
Isn't it a press pass?
I thought you get a camera from like this hut past the frog with the lily pad. You had to throw the sword at the archers.
Never went there.
Oh. Well, there's a camera.
Oh, weird. I didn't get that item.
If you just take the camera with you, he'll be like, "Oh, you're part of the press because you have a camera."
Does he say, "Are you part of the press now? I quit."
Yeah.
Okay, then I found the press pass, which is a different item.
There's 2 different items for that.
That does the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can take pictures with the camera, but I don't know what for. Like, I'm sure that's used for a secret or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's presumably a thing.
But yeah, so like when you went back to your little base, like the whatever home that you were staying at, like outside of it, there'd be the watering can and the camera, which were alternate things you could take with you.
Right. Man, oh man, you take the camera instead of the sword.
Yeah.
That's very weird.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Wonder what the point of that was.
Yes, I'm sure it had some other use, but I never found it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's sort of the case with a lot of the things. Like, this goes back to sort of what I was saying about the tone of the game, in that like the items, because of the frantic nature of like how you run around, you don't often get the chance to like see what an item does immediately. You have to sort of like figure it out. And but like example, one of the first items that you'll get in the game is just coffee, which you do by killing 5 crabs and talking to a man in a cafe. And the coffee is what lets you push boxes, which I don't know, kind of makes sense.
It doesn't. But I think the game does explicitly tell you what that one does.
Well, yeah, it's the next time that you're on a screen with a box, it says use the D-pad to push boxes. So that's kind of where the tutorializing comes in. The same thing with the toss glove, whatever you want to call it.
The sword throwing power up.
Yeah. It just like sort of flashes a thing up on the screen. But if you go into the items menu, it actually has like a description of everything. And I did not know that the coffee was what was letting me push boxes. I thought that I could just always push boxes. I didn't know that I needed an item to do it. So, yeah. Items. I think what's left is to talk about the audio and visual presentation. Which you didn't mention the visuals a bit ago, but I think they're definitely worth calling out because it is very like, it's weird. It's got more detail because of like the higher resolution than you would have been able to on an older console, but you can tell that a lot of the character designs, and the Scorpions really like drove this home for me, in their classic 1984 song. Is that like the character models are clearly based on like Atari 2600 era like pixely graphics, where everything was a little bit too, the guy who made the pixel art knew that what it was supposed to represent was so clear, but no one who looks at it will ever see the same image that he did. The Scorpions are kind of just like this mess of pixels.
I thought they looked like scorpions.
Well, I mean, they do in an abstract sense.
Yeah.
But it just really, it brought me back to sort of that like adventure era where everything was just sort of like, oh, that's a key.
Yeah, it's even like your main character almost kind of makes me think of like the Atari version of Pac-Man. Like I think you're absolutely right where like there's especially with the Scorpions, like there's this style of pixel art from the Atari that's a lot more like long rectangle shapes, like they're not very circular.
Right. Yeah, they couldn't do circles like at all. So everything is the long rectangle pixels and the very few pixels per inch.
Right.
Like, so this game has like a weird double standard because it is like a modern game and didn't actually have the technological limitations where they're designed that way, but then there's some items that are way more detailed just to sort of like let you know what the thing actually is. And yeah, it's kind of, I mean, beautiful is a strong word, but I think that their decisions with the art in this game made it look really, really good and fit the tone of the game really well.
Yeah, and it kind of the thing it makes me think of most specifically is the original Game Boy version of Link's Awakening. I don't know if you can recall exactly what that looks like.
I only ever played the Switch version and the DX, the color version, so I don't know.
Yeah, but you just kind of reverse the color palette where it's a black background and white sprites on it. And like the ghost house that's like above the cemetery felt like very Undertale almost, because it's like the black and white palette, and like you get the more detailed house art asset in there and it stands out. But yeah, I totally agree. Like it's just like a nice, simplistic, only as much detail as they need. Like the way that they represent the sand. There's like some pixels here and there, and like waves. There's just a couple little waves. Yeah, it comes together nice.
Yeah. Did you ever solve the ghost house puzzle?
I don't know. I mean, like, I went through it a while, and then when
It's such an indignant.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
I don't know exactly what you were supposed to, air quotes, do there, but like I went through it for a while trying to figure out something, and then I left, and I came out, and there was a ghost outside named like Mary or something, and I talked to her and got an achievement for it.
Okay.
So I think I might have accidentally solved it.
Nice.
So
That's more than I can say. I didn't
Yeah.
know what to do, and I didn't go back after I died.
I know, like taking.
There's also a bone.
Yeah, taking the bone which you lets you see the ghosts.
Okay.
I think.
All right.
So if you take the bone and like you go, maybe it was taking the bone to the house is what did it. I don't know.
Who knows?
But yeah, taking the bone with you lets you see and talk to the ghosts.
I feel like I should play more of this game at some point.
Yeah, I the only things I have left are like some nitpicky things. You mentioned the sneakers way earlier on.
Yeah.
I feel like those were a little bit of a missed opportunity. If they would have made those like a main progression thing earlier on, they could have made the map a little bit bigger because you could have like designed around that so you could get up further. But as they're only used in the secret temple to get through that little maze. And the other thing I have is I think with the way the game is now, like the way it's designed, I think some of the extra content, like the secrets and bonus stuff, could have been integrated into main story. Just a little, not all of it, because you still want secrets, but like some of it, like getting the tentacles and the coins for the sneakers, feel like it should be main game content and not extra. So those are my two nitpicky things.
I mean, that's fair. And from my experience, like the coins were by and large too difficult to find.
Yep.
I
thought they were gonna be a main story thing.
Same.
And like I got like 2 or 3 fairly quickly, and then it was just like nothing until I got like maybe 2 more later on. And that surprised me.
Yeah, I definitely finished the game with like 5 or 6 of them, which is not a lot. It's not even enough for the shoes.
Yeah, you need 7 for the shoes.
And there's like 19, and based on the one that I found by just like hitting a dumpster with a sword, accidentally, it seems like they're in the most like barren, pointless locations. And yeah, I think that if they had made those a little bit more apparent and made some of the stuff more like required to do, they could even sort of keep the major quest structure the same as it is, and just let, like, if you are really, really good and know exactly what you're doing, you can still finish the game at the same time. But like, the shoes make it easier, and these other things will help you do this other stuff. And like, just like being able to pick up the other items and make the, like a Breath of the Wild type thing where you can like either choose to run straight for the end or go about your business and make it a little bit easier for yourself.
Right.
But yeah, I don't disagree with it. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about sound design, not just the music, which I thought was genuinely pretty good.
Yeah, the music was good. There were weird points where it would just kind of cut out for seemingly no reason, but
yeah, it's like screen dependent.
Yeah.
Like some of the screens don't have music, some of them have different music. And I think if you ever prolong a run for longer than a minute, like by picking up an item or something, the song ends at a minute.
Oh yeah.
I'm not 1,000% sure that was the case, but I think that did happen. So, there you go. But the other thing I wanted to mention was that, like, the actual sound effects in this range from being, like, very true to the era, sort of, like, silly sound chip style sounds, to being just, like, hilarious for some reason. Like, when you kill a snake, it plays, like, that, like, Japanese dramatic drum sound. It's like ba-dum, and like
I don't
it's
even
like
remember.
A rattle. It's
Okay,
so
yeah.
Good. There's, I don't know, like a lot of the hit sounds and stuff, like everything's like tailored to the thing that you're actually hitting, which is nice. And the just like the variety of shit that is like the sounds that play from like squeaky noises when you hit like NPCs that can't be killed and stuff like that. Like it's just very good, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think you hit on it with saying it feels like era appropriate, but they like play around in that and they do some cheeky things with it.
For sure.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's a very charming part of the game.
Do we have any last minute thoughts?
I was gonna go with second thoughts, but last minute is probably a cleaner, better thing.
Second thoughts is the one where you have to like
Think about it for a second.
yeah, for a second,
For a
at least a
second,
second,
yeah.
maybe even a minute.
Yeah.
But do we have them?
Yeah. I think as you were saying earlier, it's the sort of thing where I thought I might not like it, like depending on the implementation. Like I don't know if I'm going to enjoy having to redo things every minute, and it sounds like it could be tedious and unenjoyable, but in practice, it's implemented well. It's fun. I feel like there should be more top-down games. Like I just have fun with that base mechanical interaction. However simple and stripped down it might be here, it's still fun. The mechanic is really clever. I feel like they could have pushed it a little bit further, but everything that's here is fun, not too hard. I think maybe that's even a benefit that they didn't push it too far, because it could have gotten maybe a little bit too frustrating at times. So I think they strike a nice balance, and I don't know, it makes me want to see like a sequel or something, another iteration on the idea. I think there's still a lot here, and this is a really good first like installment if they were to continue on with this kind of a concept. But yeah, so pretty positive last minute thoughts on this one.
Nice.
Took me by surprise.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that more or less. Like, I don't necessarily know that this. I mean, you could make a sequel to this game pretty solidly, I would imagine, but I don't think that it's like a. But I don't know how far you can expand this concept to continue to make it interesting.
Yeah, I felt like they didn't. There was the thing like the old man, where you had to like go straight to him to hear his whole story. Like I feel like that is a clever use of the 1 minute limitation,
right?
And there's not a lot of stuff that's similar to that. I think that's one way you could up the like. I don't know.
Complexity.
The complexity. How you could kind of flesh out the concept a bit more, but
yeah, I mean that all makes sense to me. Just like anything else that's like this would definitely like anything that takes this kind of strict time limit as its like conceit, its general sort of like gameplay rule, would have to look back to this game now that it exists to be like, what did Minit do, and like what parts of it were successful. And yeah, so I definitely agree with that. This is sort of a game that would be a good look at time as a mechanic in games, like something that you could actually look back to and say like, this is how they designed around that, and it's interesting because of it. I think I ended up being pretty positive on this, and I think a lot of the negativity that I heard about this game, there wasn't like all that much, but it was enough that it made the game seem like it had sort of a mixed reception, probably has to do with the length of the game. I don't know that there's that much that you can expect out of a game called Minit as far as like length of game, but I finished the game in about like an hour and 15 minutes, and that is pretty short for a $10 purchase, but I've also spent $10 on a cheeseburger before.
Right.
And that didn't entertain me for even close to an hour. And I think that's probably a good way of looking at it. Like, this is a $10 game that you buy to entertain you for a day. And it fucking works. Like, it's a good game. I enjoyed playing it, and I wasn't upset by, like, it not providing me. Like I said, I didn't go back and do the other stuff, and that stuff is there for you to do if you need more content out of it. So in the end, I agree mostly with what Andy said. And then in an attempt to add stuff onto it, I also think it's a decent value proposition, even if you don't think it is.
Yeah.
There's my weird economics final thoughts. Good job, Minit. Good game. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP Pocket.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Man of Medan. And I legitimately do not know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But
that's how I pronounced it, so
that's fair, yeah. Which is like it's a single or multiplayer co-op horror game from the developers of Until Dawn. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I liked Until Dawn.
Same.
And we never talked about it on the podcast, but it's pretty good.
I think the ending is a bit disappointing.
I mean, it depends on.
Yeah.
We didn't play it multiple times. Maybe there's an ending that would have really tickled your fancy.
I guess.
Yeah. But until that time. Oh, by the way, it's the reason we're doing it is because it's Halloween. Ooh,
hot fuck.
And until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com. There you can find links to our email, our Twitter, our Discord. You can find all of our old episodes, including the one that we did on Link's Awakening at the beginning of this year. Pretty good one. Mm-hmm. The Switch remake.
We've also got like Return of the Obra Dinn, another black and white retro aesthetic game.
We did
Undertale,
and the first episode of Deltarune, which are similarly comedic black and white games.
Oh, and West of Loathing, comedic black and white game.
Yeah, more white and black on that one, but
fair enough.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Now, we can hope that we don't have to fuck with the audio at all.
Fuck with our audio, Ben Kenobi. You're our only hope.